Zuckerberg went before the Senate and said the Biden administration threatened us, so we had to censor people on social media. So, but then now you've said the Trump administration, in your view, is doing the exact same thing, and we've given some examples. So how do you break this cycle? It's like the next guy that gets elected, they're just going to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, I actually think what Trump's doing is significantly worse. It took me a long time to say that because I was like, well, what Biden did was actually be more behind closed doors, so it's harder, but it was harder to hold him to account. That was one of the problems with the case we brought to the Supreme Court. Was the court basically said, you just don't have enough proof that your clients were censored because of the government's actions. The social media companies might have decided to censor these people anyway. And you have to show this link. And if the government's sort of operating covertly, it's very hard to show that link. Trump makes it pretty obvious because he's just like, we're going to deport that guy for what he said. So it makes it a lot easier. But I do think the gravity of the punishment that the Trump administration is levying on people, like being put in behind bars, being deported, getting expelled from school. That's much more severe than getting kicked off social media, which I understand. Like, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that some people make their livings off it. To some people, it's not a small deal. But I do think, getting removed from the country and away from your wife and newborn is a more severe punishment than losing your social media account.
I would tend to disagree with the question. I said, I don't like to get into this, what's worse, but the problem with what the Biden administration did is almost precisely that they were much smoother at it, so to speak. They did it more behind the scenes and more indirectly. And it may be true that, being deported is a big deal. I was an immigration attorney when I started my law practice years ago. So I've represented people in deportation hearings. It's a big deal, right? On the other hand, wholesale censorship of conservative views on a major communicative medium is, to me, much more long-term threatening to democracy and dangerous of kind of putting the screws to our entire democratic life and creating the possibility of more individual abuses, such as individuals being singled out in particular cases. So I think when you look at second-order effects like that, I'm not sure I would agree with her judgment.
They were saying if you publicly advocated for challenging the election or contesting it or questioning it in any manner, or if you donated to somebody who did, or if you were a lawyer who advocated it in court, that they were calling that a federal crime worthy of 20 years in federal prison. They said anyone who filed an open records request should be under criminal investigation because they said an open records request was a crime. They said filing an election lawsuit in court was a crime. Filing a petition with your state legislator was a crime. Filing a petition for an electoral challenge with Congress was a crime. Publicly speaking about the issue, they said, was a crime. Donating to somebody who supported any of these issues was a crime. And they put all of us under massive investigation. They stole people's phone records. They stole people's financial records. They basically wiretapped and spied on them en masse. I mean, this was a massive effort to entrap and ensnare and ultimately imprison as many of the core MAGA supporters as they possibly could. This was the most systemic violation of civil rights and civil liberties by our Justice Department and Federal Bureau of Insurrection in American history.
Yeah, baby. It's episode 59 of The Whiners on November 6th, 2025. Jeff Norman with my pal Morgan and my other pal Ryan, as always. And tonight, our special guest, and I mean special, I'm not just saying that, is James Howard Kunstler. He's a very prolific author and blogger. He's also the host of a podcast called Kunstler Cast, which he describes as conversations about converging catastrophes of the 21st century. His Substack blog is called provocatively Clusterfuck Nation, and it just happens to be one of my favorite blogs. He's one of my favorite writers. You can access all of that stuff at kunstler.com. And his latest book, Look, I'm Gone, was published just a few days ago, and you can buy it on our website, ustourofduty.org. Good evening to you, Jim. How the heck are you?
I'm pretty heckin' good. I'm all right. I'm still here. I mean, every day's a near-death experience, but I'm all right.
Every day's a blessing. Well, it's a pleasure to have you.
Namaste, baby.
Are you actually in New York, by the way?
I'm in upstate New York. I'm
Upstate.
By the way, is my mic working okay?
Yes, you sound good.
Yeah.
You sound
Okay.
good.
In fact, let's ask that question to the audience, because sometimes the way it sounds to us is a little different to them. So if you guys could post in the comments, is our volume all equal and all that kind of stuff, I'd appreciate it.
Do we sound sexier together at the same time? I guess that would be the other one.
I'm not sure. I'm not sexy, but I'm getting a buzz. 14 hands from Washington State in honor of Jim. Not that he's from Washington State, but I know he likes life a little bit off the beaten path. So this is my way of paying homage to you and your belief system, so to speak. We'll get into that a little bit later. $12 average price, a nice blend.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. You know it?
Sounds like
Of course.
Wine.
What'd you say, Jim?
Sounds like a very earnest wine.
14
Ernest.
hands.
There's an adjective I haven't heard among all the very many wine adjectives. What are you drinking, Wayne?
What I'm drinking is called Wildcatter. I met the winemaker recently because my local wine cellar invited me to a closed door event. You know what a Wildcatter is, Jeff or Morgan? Wildcatter is somebody who was involved in oil exploration back in the old days. I suppose there are still wildcatters now looking to strike it rich on black gold. So this wine is a tribute to that wine. Normally, it is that job, working man's job. That's not a working man priced wine. I don't think I paid that.
Now, Ryan, did you know what Wildcatter was, or did he tell you, or this person?
Well, he said that actually his father got started as a wildcatter, and so that's why he kept that name for the wine.
Okay, but did you know what the term was, or did he inform you?
Well, no, the reason I know it is because my family came from
smart.
Scotland to Oil City, Pennsylvania, like 3 generations ago. They were wildcatters back then in Oil City. So I knew a little bit, yeah.
It looks from the label like they drill for the wine.
That's exactly it, right? They're drilling
Very
for wine.
appetizing.
Yep.
Peak oil, baby.
Peak oil. Yeah, it's still around.
All right. Well, we survived Election Day, and we survived the Trump must go fall of fascist regime demonstrations that attracted millions of people, just like the organizers promised.
I was there.
Yeah, sure you were. You know, Jim, I was talking to Ryan before we started, and I swear I didn't see anything about this anywhere except you mentioning it on your blog. That's how successful.
Well, yesterday when it was supposedly happening, I saw one measly little video on somebody's Twitter feed, and it looked like a few hundred people marching down Constitution Avenue and not much more. And nobody covered it. Alt News didn't cover it. The New York Times didn't cover it. It seems like it didn't really happen.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything to cover. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Think about it. The steam must be building. You had the 50501 protest, the Not My President Day, the boycott economic blowout, the Tesla takedown, hands off, Day of Action in April, May Day protest, no kings, Free America Weekend, rage against the regime, fight the Trump takeover, workers over a billionaires, and now this. Doesn't that mean it's about toppling the administration. It's about to happen any minute now.
Well, that's what Jim has to say about it.
Are you axing me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. Is it happening? Or my question to you is just to throw to one of your articles, is this just kind of like an AI, unreality? It's something that's a nothing.
I think the street action is not really coming together the way that party wants it to come together. But I think that the action in the courts and the lawsuits and the lawfare is working overtime and is working very effectively. And also the retrenchment and kind of reorganizing their revenue flow from NGOs and various wealthy parties who contribute and support those NGOs. They're rebuilding a system that was partially dismantled when the USAID was blown up. But I think that lawfare thing is very dangerous and very perilous. It's not good for our country. It's destroying people's faith in the legal system.
Would you say it's just
making a mockery
private
of the legal system?
Is it just going more private now, since it's not?
No, it's not private. This is taking place in the legal arena. You've basically got the lawyer Norm Eisen, who's a behind the scenes lawfare guy. Many people probably don't recognize the name or know what he looks like.
Oh, I recognize it as like one of the worst scumbags in the history of our nation.
I think that's pretty close.
Yeah.
He's been a kind of a presence at many of the seditious events of the last 10 years. If you look back at the hearings that preceded impeachment number 1, he was one of the committee attorneys and at the time it was a committee that was chaired and dominated by the Democratic Party. And he was one of their chosen counsels. And, he's had his hand in that. He's had his hand in Russiagate. The Mar-a-Lago thing. He was a presence behind Jack Smith organizing his prosecutions, and basically Norm Eisen and Mary McCord, who's also been leapfrogging around from one job to another in the federal government, from the Department of Justice to, I think she was in the FBI for a while. She goes from one place to another. She's now in Georgetown University occupies a kind of a holding pen for these people. When they're out of power or they're out of an official job, Georgetown absorbs them like a kind of an amoeba and gives them a place to dwell for a while in safety. And Mary McCord is there. Mary McCord was also, involved in the first impeachment and the J6 committee. Norm Eisen was involved with setting up the J6 committee. These are really nefarious people.
Yeah, really terrible.
And that's where the real action is right now. It is real sophisticated sedition.
Well, yeah, we had Christina Bobb, who was the lawyer on hand at the Mar-a-Lago raid on the show. So she really gave us a very clear picture of how that on the ground and the lawfare operation were going on. But you also, and I know Jeff might have something to say about this, you are saying that Arctic Frost is worse than Watergate as part of this.
Actually, he quoted Grassley as saying.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Correct.
I think that the whole thing is bad. I think, as far as I'm concerned, the Russiagate thing was probably the worst of the worst. Yeah. It's hard to tell whether that or the various New York prosecutions and the Fulton County prosecution, that whole package of prosecutions against Mr. Trump was just so patently preposterous. And the fact that the legal system, including the various judges and all the layers of courts that were involved, that those cases, that they got away with prosecuting those cases is just an astonishing failure in our legal system. I'm not a lawyer, but it's, you look at the E. Jean Carroll case, where Attorney General in New York, Letitia James, cooked up a deal with the state legislature to repeal or to write a law that said that the statute of limitations on ancient claims of sexual misbehavior, there was no longer a statute of limitations on that anymore. So that, she could and it was only that particular thing would only be good for 1 year. It gave her a 1 year window to prosecute Mr. Trump in this, what was actually turned out to be a civil case for coming on to E. Jean Carroll and, in a dressing room in Bonwit Teller, which probably didn't happen. It was just an ugly case. All of these cases were malicious prosecutions, and all of them probably fall under the federal statutes for, denial of rights under color of law.
Well, the Arctic Frost scandal, I think, involves a unique statute because some senators were spied on. And I think there's a special statute that gives them extra protection. That's true. Which maybe, on one hand, maybe that doesn't thrill us that they get special protection, but on the other hand, I think it's what might be opening the door for these scumbags to be held accountable. Well,
I don't know. I think this is a very undeveloped story so far, and it's hard to feel optimistic about anything that the Congress is asked to do or liable to do, or they have fallen down on every obligation and responsibility they have to kind of keeping the Constitution on the rails. They hold a lot of hearings and nothing ever happens, and nobody is ever has to account for anything. And I think that there are an awful lot of people who are getting sick of it. Now, on the other hand, I think that there's another argument that says that the reason that nothing's going on is that they have to very carefully construct whatever cases they're going to bring against a lot of people for very serious crimes. And what's been happening in the background is the construction of cases, and that assuming that something like that is going on. It's probably a good thing, and we're probably fortunate that nothing has leaked out of the DOJ.
Right.
And that's
Comey was indicted, so hopefully he's the first of several.
Yeah, and that was a very difficult process, which is now under review, and they've got, the judge in the case is apparently pretty hostile to the Pam Bondi DOJ and the people in it, and seems to be friendly to Mr. Comey. And it's just an example of what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. You cannot trust the court system, and you cannot trust the judges. They seem to absolutely not be impartial. They seem to be bought in one way or another, either I don't know, through loyalty or influence or blackmail or something that is prompting,
or just human flaws. Maybe we like to think,
and also just ideology and emotion, feeling hatred for Mr. Trump. It really is hard to understand in some people exactly what this hatred is. I can understand the great blob of the federal bureaucracy hating Mr. Trump because their livelihoods are being threatened by downsizing the government and eliminating a lot of departments and stuff. So naturally, they hate the guy. But with a guy like Comey or Brennan or anybody really in a serious power situation, I see this as kind of a two-level phenomenon, that you have the powerful people in the Democratic Party, and you have a tremendous scaffold of this huge engine that allows them to keep their power, and it includes the NGOs and the Soros organizations and the Bill Gates organizations and some of the Silicon Valley people.
Do you see Mamdani's election as perpetuating the situation?
Wait,
or
let me
is this
finish this
something-
thought.
Oh,
if you
okay, I
don't mind.
apologize. No, I apologize. Go ahead.
So you have that layer of power seeking and power holding, and it includes the people who are the heads of the agencies, the people who are officers with important jobs in government. But then you have this whole armature of racketeering that the Democratic Party has engineered over the last 30 years. And it involves some of the same devices that we've just talked about, the NGOs and the billionaire money and the flows of revenue and everything. And what it serves is, you have all these NGOs that actually employ this elite overproduction of people coming out of the Ivy League schools. Well, indeed, all the
Georgetown.
colleges. And it gives them some kind of a job, doing something stupid, like running a DEI program or, some fucking stupid endeavor that does nothing for Western civilization or the economy or anything. But, they're making six-figure salaries and they're hiring other people. And then, each one of these organizations spawns another organization or three more organizations. And it manifests in creatures like Stacey Abrams, this political creature in Georgia who, can't get elected to anything anymore.
She writes great books.
Oh yeah, she writes like bodice ripper romances, right? Where she did that for a while anyway. But she creates one NGO after another. Many of them have been associated with various green initiatives, and the last one happened in the twilight of the Joe Biden administration. And Joe Biden somehow managed to send out something like $70 or $90 billion into the Department of the Environmental Protection Department,
EPA.
and somehow Stacey Abrams got a grant for many millions of dollars, and the whole idea was that she was going to create this NGO to replace appliances in her area in Georgia with more efficient, greener appliances, and she got millions and millions of dollars, and I think the only thing that her organization accomplished was to switch out a few dozen refrigerators, before they took it away from her.
And toilets that you have to flush at least 3 times. Don't forget, because they don't
This
have
is the
enough
kind
water
of thing
pressure.
that went on, and she's just one example of exactly this kind of racketeering that's going on.
Yeah.
And there's this huge armature of it, it's a huge matrix. It's this vast organization of linked racketeering operations, and that's what the Democratic Party is. That's what they're defending, and that's what the people in power are charged to do, is to make sure that those rackets continue.
Morgan,
I would say both sides are conducting themselves in that, USAID has just been transferred to the State Department. They're
The
still
remnants of
continuing.
it.
Yeah, but they're still continuing to funnel these money into, color revolutions, these black ops
I
operations.
don't think a whole lot. I think a lot of that has been stopped.
It's still happening. With GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, these different operations that were funded through USAID, but through the State Department, because the USAID is no longer. I guess my question is, there are very legitimate reasons that you could go for Trump. His targeting strikes off of Venezuela, or, this expansion with ICE, but that would actually require them to critique the system as a whole. Do you think that that's why they're not going after him? Because if they truly hate him and they don't want their buddies to get caught in this mix of, I think it's just reorganizing who kind of wins in favor of this corruption. there's legitimate reasons to go after Trump, and they're not going after him, but that, like, if you
No,
were to
I
go
don't think
after
the
ICE,
immigration thing is a legitimate reason to go after him. He's just, I think ICE is just enforcing the law. You got millions and millions of people who jump the border. They're not allowed to be here. They're subject to deportation. They're being deported. End of story.
yeah.
Isn't any more complicated than that.
For me, the Patriot Act is unconstitutional. And the Patriot Act is what gave rise to ICE. We didn't have that organization.
Well, we certainly had an apparatus that deported people that might have had another name. So
Yeah.
I don't think that that's really
Border control.
really germane.
Mhm.
These people came here. They broke the law. They did it with the connivance of the Biden administration, but they got to go.
Yeah,
Well-
I think there still needs to be that semblance of humanity, in the sense of, we don't allow ICE agents to bust down doors in Chicago apartments.
No, I don't think so. I think, like, boo-hoo, too bad. Boo-hoo.
Well, I think the unfortunate part is a lot of us would like to hold even people we support accountable. And it's kind of like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, these stories about ICE using excessive force. The people who are making the accusations don't have a lot of credibility.
And I'm not sure it's really real anyway. I mean,
Yeah. Some of it probably is
BS.
false, but some of it's probably real. I mean, police do use excessive force sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's hard to believe it. Even if it's true, it's not what I would call credible, because credible and true are not the same thing. If you're not a
Absolutely.
trust, yeah. If you
That's
don't,
like that, being someone who writes both fiction and nonfiction, I'm keenly aware of the fact that, when you're writing fiction, you only have to be plausible. You don't have to be correct.
right.
To the other point, you could say that we should be holding Trump accountable for actually getting out of wars and not saber rattling. I think that's sort of what Morgan might be in that direction. Or take the economy. Now, of course, all of those demonstrators, they never talk about how the economic situation we're in now, where the Federal Reserve is bailing out more banks. This has been going on this is part of a 40-year, 50-year process of breakdown. I was at Jeff's recommendation looking at some of the background that you have in, building cities or urbanization, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wrote a bunch of books about urban design and a kind of a critique of the suburban project.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, there's some legitimate things to say, hey, we need to rebuild a lot of the United States and get the production going again. You said in one of your articles, take Waymo, which isn't making any money. I thought the whole idea of the economy was to have more people working, right? So you could say we can hold the leaders accountable for something like that, but these demonstrators, they don't actually ever seem to get into that depth.
Well, let's face it, a lot of these demonstrators are on the payroll of various.
That's true. There are agencies that hire. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Soros and NGOs are getting paid. The one clip I saw yesterday on Twitter for the November 5th levitate Trump out of the White House demonstration was a reporter who's been on camera during all the Portland, Oregon Michigas that went on, for the last month. And he was out there a lot. And now he's on the street in Washington. And, I guess he's a reporter who he flies himself around and he's got some resources. He discovered that a lot of the people who were on the scene in front of the ICE facility in Portland, Oregon, were marching on the street in Washington. And he was asking them, who paid your airfare to get here? Because these are people, these are like mentally ill losers who don't have a job and are, sleeping on their friends' couches. And, how do they get across the country? Well, someone's obviously paying them to do it, and they're buying them a Teletubby suit to do it in.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical about that accusation. I mean, although this demonstration we were referring to yesterday seems to have been a bust, there really are many, many people who hate Trump. And it doesn't seem like they really need to be paid to be motivated to go out there.
I'm sure that there are plenty of them that aren't paid. And, well, I've even seen them in my backyard here. I'm in the upper Hudson Valley, about 200 miles from New York City and about 10 miles from the Vermont border and maybe 15 miles from Saratoga Springs to the west. And we've had No Kings rallies in the neighboring town 7 miles up the road. And, I saw a lot of old hippie gorks that I know, that I've known for,
It's a word I don't know. What's a gork? Wow.
A gork. Well, it's kind of onomatopoeia,
Oh, yeah.
It's when a goy, what's the Nick Fuentes one? A goiper? When a goiper. When a groiper marries a dork.
Yeah, maybe. But a bunch of geriatric boomers and people nostalgic for the glory days of the Vietnam War protests, and it's so fucking stupid. They're marching around with signs that say resist, and if you actually engage them in conversation and say, "What are you resisting?" They say, "Trump wants to be a tyrant." Yeah. Well, how's he doing that? Well, he's being mean to immigrants. It's just.
He's literally a fascist. That's always convincing when they put literally in front of him. He's literally a fascist.
Look, I've been paying close attention to the whole woke Jacobin revolution of the last 10 years. And one thing is absolutely unmistakable is that the left is the most despotic and autocratic and tyrannical group that's out there. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something else. I'm not even sure that they're simply in it just, for ideological reasons or for policy reasons or because they disagree with how people are treated or what I detect they're really in it for is sheer sadomasochism. They just take a certain delight in punishing their enemies. And, I think we see that manifested in things like the fact that they're so quick to violence and, they're so eager to assassinate their adversaries and opponents. And I really think that they're deeply sadistic as well as being.
Well, I think you're right. I mean,
wanting to push everybody around.
How else could you characterize their zeal for all the lawfare against Trump and being so happy with the way he's being punished? And each one of these cases is more ridiculous than the other one. You mentioned the woman who allegedly was molested or whatever by him 900 years ago.
Jean Carroll. I met her once, actually. It was like 35 years ago. I had been a staff writer and an editor briefly at Rolling Stone magazine when they were located in San Francisco in 74 and 75. And I didn't like the job. It was my sort of final job in corporate journalism. And I made a very deliberate decision to drop out. And I did. I got on a motorcycle, rode across the country, and embarked on my career as a novelist. And I was 26 years old. Exactly the moment in your life when you should make a decisive move if you're going to make it at all. And I did that. But I settled in Saratoga Springs, which is a lovely American Main Street town in upstate New York, and one of the few thriving, healthy towns that still exist in America, because everything around it looks like, Kazakhstan after the fall of the Soviet Union. But
and they have a great monument to somebody's boot, if I recall.
Benedict Arnold's boot.
Benedict Arnold.
At the battlefield, which is actually like 15 miles
exactly.
east of Saratoga Springs. Yep. But I settled there. It was a great place to live. It was a great place to be a starving bohemian, which was what I was for about 15, 20 years in the, between the age of 26 and 45. I pumped out 8 novels, but I didn't get rich. But it was a great place to live, and I had a great life and doing that. And anyway, somewhere around the early 80s, I got a call from Jean Carroll. She was writing a book about Rolling Stone, it had been around for about 15 years by then. So she came to Saratoga and interviewed me, and she was, at that point, she was kind of a sexy cookie of about 40 odd years old. Mm-hmm. She was a little older than me, but I could see that she seemed to be have a kind of liveliness about her, shall we say? I didn't start anything with her, and she didn't start anything with me, but But I spent.
We also saw her flirting with Anderson Cooper. Was she like? Did you get that? You know what I'm talking about?
I saw that. Yeah, I think I saw that thing.
It was really weird.
Well, when she's like 83 now or something, so it's a little bit unseemly. But back then, she was still pretty good looking, and she was an attractive cookie. But she wrote this book. I don't know if I ever read it. I did read a much later biography of Jan Wenner, but which was pretty interesting. But anyway, that was my encounter with E. Jean Carroll.
Well, let's talk about the election. I've started to ask about Mamdani.
Oh gosh,
Mamdani before. I know you're not in love with him, but I wanted to sort of peg it to that point you were making about politics as usual. Is he just perpetuating the usual in a sense? Although this democratic socialism is clearly somewhat of a departure. Or do you think it's more of a complete departure and it portends maybe a new era?
No, I would call it an emergent phenomenon. Emergence is a kind of a force of nature in the world. And what it really means is that the systems that we live within tend to be self-organizing phenomena. And they respond to the signals that they're getting from the universe, from reality. And what Mamdani is an emergent phenomenon. He represents things that have been forces that have been in motion for quite a while. And they have put him, in a certain spot at a certain time for certain reasons. And I think the reasons are not that difficult to understand. One is that the younger generations are having a very, very hard time. I wrote a book myself about 3 years ago called Young Man Blues, about the difficulties of growing up when I did in the late 60s and 70s and becoming, going from being a feckless boy to becoming a real man. And it was difficult enough then, but it's nowhere near as difficult as it is now, especially because, manhood itself is in such a bad odor.
Crisis of identity, right?
It's
right
terrible.
Now. Yeah. But back then you could go and be an apprentice in a welding shop, for example. Right.
True.
It's different today. You can't do that now. Everybody has to have a degree, even if it is in, how to push this one button over and over again. You still have to have a degree.
Look at it. It's really, I think it's just dreadfully hard. And dreadfully hard, especially for young men. Young women have actually enjoyed a kind of a favored position for the last 20 odd years or so. There are more of them in college than there are men. There has been a tendency to hire them instead of men, especially white men. We all know this. This is not a surprise, but it's hard. It's hard. And on top of that, so many of them are saddled with these unpayable college loans that are just making their lives impossible. These loans that cannot be, they're undischargeable loans that cannot even be canceled by bankruptcy because of laws that were passed, 10 years ago or so.
Okay, but Jim, let me interrupt you a second here because I like where you're going, but back to specifically, you're saying Mamdani represents this emergent quality. Now, I've been having some discussions with various people who did vote for Donald Trump, but some of them say, well, Mamdani represents a rejection of the Miriam Adelson, therefore an anti-Zionist trend. Michael Hudson says that people are liking the word socialism more because they want somebody to address, these different things that are going on in their personal economic situation. So what about some of that?
Well, I think for one thing, public opinion is really being manipulated on the subject of the Jews, Israel, that whole package of things. I think public opinion is really being played on that. For one thing, if you really think about it for 5 minutes, the last thing that the United States of America needs is to be overwhelmed by Islamic jihadists. Okay, we just don't need that. Okay, our culture does not fit very well with that.
Jim, are you aware that the first country to ever acknowledge America and actually trade with America was an Islamic Arabic country, Morocco?
So what?
So
I
what?
mean, that's
is
just
that
a
we have-
gimmicky idea. It doesn't mean
It's not a
anything.
gimmicky idea. It's that we
Which
have
country
long
was it?
tradition of exchanging cultures and ideas with
Which country was it,
Muslims.
Morgan?
But now that we are saying that they're jihadist, therefore
Which country was it? Did you just hear this as a meme you heard somewhere?
It's Morocco.
Which country was it?
It's Morocco. Yeah.
Well, Thomas
first
Jefferson
country.
also sent the U.S. Navy to North Africa to battle the Islamic people in the early 1800s because they were kidnapping our sailors. So it's not that simple. I just think, look at one of the things
I
really
take great offense to this jihadist Islamophobic rhetoric that we.
I don't care if you take great offense to it. We're at the end of the age of being offended for stuff. Okay, that's not. You can't cop an offense. You can't cop an offense.
Say, Jim,
and you can't cop an offense
to claim an entire religion as jihadist, which is the rhetoric gets correlated to being a terrorist. I feel like that's very ignorant to say.
Why don't we just ask Jim what he means by it? I mean, here's a quote from one of your recent posts, and you refer to Mamdani as a Marxist jihadi. What does that mean exactly?
I think he's in favor of violently opposing the enemies of Islam, which are Western civilization, Israel, the Jews, more generally. I think that the Islamic world is at war with Western civilization, and it should be self-evident, should be obvious, and that we should stop pretending otherwise. And I think that Zoran, Zoran was posing with
anything about the Jews.
Zoran was posing with one of the guys who
project that pushes Jewish ideology as a supreme to anything else, which I think as an American citizen, I'm against any kind of supremacy project. So I don't like this whole the Jews, because he's never, could you say any quote of his that says something bad about the Jews?
Well, he did say sometime in the last 3 weeks, I believe, that he was in favor of bringing jihad to America.
I don't believe so. I spent the last 2 weeks up in New York. I work a campaign for one of the poorest congressional districts, which is the Bronx. I followed Mamdani's campaign quite, closely. He was actually very lenient, saying that he wouldn't transition different people within the departments that have been very sympathetic to the Israeli cause, even though he himself has said Netanyahu steps foot in New York, he wants to, arrest him. Which is, under the ICJ, we should arrest him, but we're not a signatory of that, which is also an issue.
Well, then why should we arrest him if we're not a signatory to it?
Why aren't we a signatory? Why
That's
should the
not
UN
the question. The question is, if we aren't, and we aren't, then we have no duty to arrest him. It's absurd. It's an absurdity, Morgan.
Well, we use the UN, this universal code of law, to go into other countries, but then when it doesn't suit us, we are no longer a signatory. That's ridiculous. I thought.
Well, we're not. We're not.
No,
we don't have any obligation.
I'm
we don't have any obligation or
aspect.
duty to arrest Netanyahu for anything here in America.
Well, I think that he's a war criminal.
Well, he happens to be our ally.
He's actually not our ally. There's no official agreement that links the United States to Israel in any kind of allyship. Just that the pure rhetoric that people like to say that we're somewhat allies. There is no partnership. There is no.
I think it's sheer rhetoric that he's a genocide, that he's committed genocide. So
the
I think it's
ICJ
all
has said
bullshit.
that it's very credible that he is committing a genocide right now.
Okay, well.
Well, let me just say one thing back on Zoran Mamdani, because in the Democratic primaries, the majority. So in New York City, the voters that are Jewish are mostly Democrats. They gave him the largest percentage of the vote in the primaries. So
they're sick fucks.
Well, it is what it is. I mean, now. In the general election, he won over 33% of the Jewish voters overall, whereas Andrew Cuomo got 63% of the vote. So, I mean, I don't know if he is a jihadi person or not. I mean, if you go to the UK, right, they have a whole big problem over there, and you do
Don't
have a
they?
problem. They do have a problem.
Yeah,
and,
they certainly do. And you know, it's destroying Great Britain.
well, I think that the issue is, right, you know, you don't have people assimilating into the culture.
That's
regardless. Right. Like if I moved to, you know, Russia, then I would be expected to speak Russian and, you know, get along with the culture there. So
Correct.
I think we're in, if you want to take it a step higher, those people like Soros, the Soroses are backing him. They're Jewish, right?
And by the way, you know, I couldn't fail to notice you showed that photograph of Alex Soros posing with Zoran.
Yeah, I did because
and he hates billionaires. You know, he thinks there should be no billionaires
except for the ones that he likes.
Right, the ones that give him, you know, that support him and give him money.
So I guess what I'm saying is that it behooves people like, let's just say, the Soroses, the general, whoever those guys are, to create this kind of culture warfare to break a nation apart. I think that is part of an end in of itself. Whether
I couldn't agree with you more.
I think that's really the issue here from the standpoint of the American public, because the United States, you know, we do support wars. We do finance Israel to the hilt. We also finance Ukraine, although we've now created a way to do it so that it's not directly financing. We sell to NATO countries, and then they go and they lose it all on the battlefield because Russia's winning. You know, so I think that spiral is what we have to get out of. And Jeff and Morgan and I were discussing that it is our responsibility as citizens to hold our leaders accountable for the things that they said that they were going to do, right? Trump did say, I do think he wants to be out of wars. I do think he is ultimately wanting to do that. But you don't have like all this lawfare and all this manipulation. You don't have anybody saying, okay, but here's the policy he should do that is loud enough, right? And the voters, basically, they get into this tit for tat kind of thing. You know, the old hags in their Teletubby suits out there screaming and yelling. They're not talking about policy.
No.
The lawfare people, Jim Comey, he's not talking about policy. Nancy Pelosi, thank God she's gone, but she's not. She's talking about kneeling down and, you know, stopping this, that, and the other while she's trading on the markets, right? So, Jim, where do we get to a point where we set these things aside? Whether you like Mamdani or you like Miriam Ailes, we set that aside and we say, how about let's get our country to do what's in the interest of our country?
Well, there seem to be an awful lot of forces.
Morgan
that
has
I'm
to
not
leave
interested
shortly.
in
She
that.
wants to
Yes,
say
I do
something.
have
One more
to
thing.
go.
Hold on, Jim.
I'm sorry. I just want to
you're
say
leaving.
bye. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Jim. Hopefully, you know, we could have a further discussion on where we disagree on a few of these things. But I do have to have another engagement to get into, so I apologize.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Take care. She, by the way, she did tell us before she has to leave, so don't think it's because of that little disagreement.
No,
Yeah.
it's all right.
Yeah.
But listen, I want to talk about something about the whole Ukraine situation. That look, it's a very, very complicated situation. I think that Mr. Trump probably overstated his case about being able to solve the problem overnight. And here's what I think is going on with the Ukraine situation. I think that Russia has to basically win this war for the following reasons. I think that Ukraine has to be neutralized. It has to be returned to the Russian sphere of influence where it has been for at least 300 or 400 years. That's where it belongs. It needs to be it is a frontier between in Eurasia between Western Europe and Russia. It needs to be a country that is not going to cause problems for Russia or Western Europe or anybody else. And the only way to get to that state is for Russia to basically subdue it, control it, allow it to be a sovereign nation if it's possible, but to do it within the Russian sphere of influence. That, I think, is really what's going on. And I think Mr. Trump realizes that, but he has to pretend that he's Russia's enemy, and he has to pretend that he's Putin's enemy, lest he be, associated with being a Putin puppet or, any of these these tropes that have been following him around for 10 years.
So in that sense,
right now, I think we're seeing a
of
game of pretend, where he's pretending to be, hostile to Russia and what they're doing. But in fact, Russia is pretty much getting close to resolving this war. They are defeating Ukraine on the battlefield.
They just took the city of Pokrovsk. It's
Correct.
completely surrounded now.
Correct. And it was an important transportation hub for a lot of their military supplies going into the eastern provinces of the Donbass. So, I'm not a Russian pimp or anything. I just think that in the natural order of things, we have to understand that Ukraine is in Russia's sphere of influence and always has been, just as the Western Hemisphere is in our sphere of influence, which is, official under the Monroe Doctrine. And, we have to restore some kind of order. There's no reason for Ukraine to have to be this disordering element in geopolitics that's got to throw the world into a frenzy. And and let's face it, we basically started the thing ourselves by destabilizing the Ukrainian government in 2014 anyway. So it's kind of on us, and I expect the war to be resolved by the Russians. And that'll be the end of it. The Europeans are.
When you say resolved, you mean they're just going to win, and eventually Ukraine will surrender?
Pretty much, yeah. And I think that the idea is that they're going to try to not damage Ukraine so badly that it becomes a basket case.
Well, they actually don't want to destroy Ukraine
no, they
to
don't.
that level.
They don't want it to become a ward of the Russian state. They want. I think
it's
they would
a lot
prefer
of trouble to deal with.
They would prefer to have it just be, a kind of an unsuccessful little country that can't really bother anybody. But they don't want it to be a menace to the world and especially to them. And the Europeans are making all these
NATO's
noises.
on the border now. That's what it means if they don't do something.
I'm sorry, what's on the border?
NATO is on their border. There's no buffer. Remember, Ukraine was technically always kind of a buffer.
That's what it is. It is a frontier region. Ukraine basically means the frontier lands, the borderlands. Anyway, in any case, Europe is impotent. Europe can't do any of the things that it's making noises about. They can't start a war with Russia. They can't prosecute a war with Russia. It's insane. They don't have enough military capability. They don't have enough production.
Come on, Macron.
And
isn't he tough?
Apart.
Isn't Macron tough?
Well, Macron is threatening to send French troops to Ukraine, but he's just talking out of his ass. He's about 5 minutes away from his government being, falling, from his being toppled.
Yeah.
So the whole European scene is completely insane at the moment. They have no capability for really affecting the game board there. And so it's up to Mr. Trump to try to finesse some way that allows the Russians to put an end to this fuckery and just return the region to stability. Now, I happen to believe that Western Europe is entering a phase of its history that's going to be very turbulent. I think it's going to be sort of comparable to the 1848 period where governments toppled and were overthrown, and the world was changing very drastically in 1848. What you really got was entering the really high tide of the industrial age, and it was disordering social life and economic life so deeply in all these European countries. You get these new populations of factory workers who are kind of like slaves, and they become conscious of their own, factory slavery. And, Marx comes along at exactly that time and informs them, furnishes them with a theory for why they are in the situation they're at. These deracinated country people who have come to the town to work in the factories in Germany and France and Britain. And, you get this tremendous uproar of revolution in 1848. And I think we're going to see something rather serious and similar in Europe, in the next couple of years.
Well, what I'd like to not see is the Europeanization of the United States in that regard, because I mean that.
What does that mean? The European.
What I mean is, again, somebody was putting in the chat that Mamdani's talking about jailing ICE agents, and even this whole question of what was going on with the Biden administration bringing in all of the illegal immigrants and so forth, where you then have this cultural breakdown. So to me, you have two things going on in Germany. Germany is the centerpiece of Europe economic. You have the whole breakdown of the productive industrial economy. Then you have the shutting down of other nations, and then the really hordes of refugees coming in. So you have the breakdown of the nation, of each nation. The European Union has become really something of that. There is your authoritarian regime. Remember, it was supposed to be a peaceful organization. And so now you have, it's chaos. People get arrested. And I know if Morgan were here, I'll speak in her behalf. People are getting arrested in various European countries for their social media posts. That's right. One thing that our previous guest had talked about here, with the Trump administration fighting for free speech. And now it appears that, except for when it comes to Israel. So what I'm saying again is this cultural warfare, where people are just where the nation itself is being destroyed through the process overall. Our economy is not doing well.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do you unravel that, Jim? That's maybe the better question, as opposed to addressing.
Well, I'm not sure it's in a lot. You said a lot in one, chunk.
You have a cultural breakdown. You have an economic breakdown. You have Europe, as you said. I mean, it's basically fissuring. I almost feel like it's a pre-World War I scenario.
Yeah, it looks really bad. It looks really grave over there. And it's not good here. At the bottom of all this is the fact that we have lost what used to be an American common culture, which is a consensus between most of the people who live here about what decent behavior is and what our values are. And, it was pretty sturdy at a certain point, probably before the 1960s. It was a sturdy thing. Well, times change, and, societies make decisions and choices, and we've made a lot of bad choices. And now we're living with the consequences of it. Let me give you one very, very sort of complicated example of how these things work. How this worked out for us. We had, I'm pretty old. I lived through the civil rights campaign. And so, in the 1960s, by the 1950s, it became obvious that we could not continue the Jim Crow program in the United States. Mostly it was in the South, of course, officially. But having won this victory over manifest evil in the Second World War, and become the sort of leader of the free world, America could no longer pretend that we could no longer pretend to be a fair and just society if we continued to discriminate against Black people. So we had the Civil Rights Campaign. It was a manifestly moral thing to do, to create laws that said that you couldn't discriminate against people and treat them badly. So we got the Voting Rights Act of 1964, the Public Accommodations Act of 64, which meant you couldn't keep people out of movie theaters and restaurants and all that, and hotels and stuff. And we got the Voting Rights Act in 1965.
Yeah.
And it was an extremely optimistic moment in American history. And the impulse behind it was really the idea that, okay, we are going to now be a society of equals, and we are inviting this group of people who we have treated very badly to enjoy the full fruits of American society and not be excluded or pushed around. And it ended up being rather disappointing for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. For one thing, it did not eliminate it did not eliminate the problems of poverty. It did not succeed in the way that we hoped it would succeed. And it also stimulated immediately in 1964 and 5 the beginning of an opposition, which was Black separatism. And you see that with Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael and many other figures and movements of that time. Now, hold on, bear with me here, okay? Yeah. And
there's nuances.
Well, there are, but let me just continue.
Yeah, please.
So, at the same time that this group of people has been invited into American culture to enjoy the full fruits of liberty, like everybody else, there's a fairly substantial cohort of Black America that decides to opt out. We don't want to do that. We want to be separate, and that goes on for a while. There's a kind of a tension, through the 60s and 70s about that. It's never really resolved, except that what happens is at the same time you get this growing Black underclass because the social programs of the 1960s are starting to create this vast population of people who are stuck in ghettos, in dead-end lives, and who are behaving badly as a result. And so the solution to that for liberal America, the people who generated the Civil Rights Crusade, is they said, well, okay. And I mean, they didn't say it explicitly this way, but what was going on was they said, the Civil Rights Crusade is kind of faltering and wobbling. It's not working out so well. So what we're going to do is have multiculturalism. We're going to say we can have many different cultures existing in America in the same culture, and they can all be okay, and everybody will get along.
Well, that was synthetic, though.
Absolutely synthetic.
I mean, the civil rights movement was not.
The point is that it defeated the idea of a sturdy common culture. So you ask, what is going to bring people together? I'll tell you what's not going to bring people together is multiculturalism. The idea that you can have different kinds of values and different forms of different kinds of decent behavior or indecent behavior. People have to be able to expect everybody to behave the same in some basic way. It's not okay to loot a grocery store or a drugstore.
Well, let me answer you on this.
We're stuck in that. We're unable to reconstruct a common culture. We cannot create a coherent consensus about what's happening to us, and we can't come up with any coherent plan for where to go from here. And that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why.
By the way, all of that is on fucking liberals. And I'm a former registered Democrat. I changed my registration just this year after being a Democrat since 1971 or 2.
Wow.
Okay. And
something is definitely
that's
done
all.
wrong.
That's all on the Democratic Party.
That's one of the reasons I lived in the Los Angeles area for like 26 years, and that's one of the reasons I moved, because there's like homelessness, people crapping in the streets, shoplifting openly all over the place, and nobody really objects to it.
It's their culture,
Right.
That's the homeless culture. You got to just go with the flow of the homeless culture.
I know. And I used to go every time I went into a supermarket, I would see shoplifting right in front of me, and I'm only there for 15 minutes while I shop. So imagine how much it's going on. So with these SNAP payments on hold, do you think we might have an explosion of shoplifting with a good percentage of the country saying, well, it's food, they got to eat? I mean, is this
it's possible. It hasn't happened so far. I would have thought if it was going to happen in any kind of performative way, which is what the Democratic Party was looking for with this November 6th or November 5th.
Performative is true, yeah.
That's what they were looking for, was some kind of performative misbehavior. So that someone would have to come down on them, and then they could say, "Oh, you're a tyrant. You're a tyrant." But I think it could happen at any time. I kind of think that Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are not going to be able to drag this out a whole lot longer. They're kind of running out of any kind of justification for doing it. The election was their main justification, and so I'm not. I do think that there will be a continued background level of low level looting, flash mobs.
Black Lives Matter will
locking
come
up
back.
all their merchandise and stuff.
Black Lives Matter will come back. So to two things there, I think going back to that period in the 60s, I mean, one quibble I would have with you is that Malcolm X, he made a shift when he went to Mecca and realized a bunch of those Muslims were also white. So he realized it wasn't just whitey that was the problem. Also, you did have all of those assassinations,
That's right.
right? So you did have
They were very traumatic.
severe shock on the population, and then we had the escalation into the Vietnam War. So if you want to look at where did we go wrong, I mean, if there isn't that part of brainwashing, is that you take a severe traumatized subject and you get them to do things that they would not normally accept, that are not in their best interest, i.e., like just say for part of it, multiculturalism, deindustrialization, whatever it is, you do that. So that's one thing I just wanted to say about that period of time. To me, that is the demarcation point of the breakdown of the United States, you know, and now it's just obvious to people. On another question, how do we reverse that? I mean, I will say, whether you like them or not, there seems to be a shift to what I would say is a more American style to what you were saying, that happy time in China right now, where they are developing, you know, they're coming up with a new 15-year plan, and they're talking about how there's going to be a new theory of productive forces centered around human creativity. So they have a very cohesive situation there. Now, they've gone through a lot of bad things too. I'm not going to deny that. Also in Russia, if you're Jew, Christian, Muslim, they really don't care. I've been there a number of times, and we're just Russians. And that is part of their cultural matrix, where they don't really care what your religious background is or these cultural backgrounds. They just say, hey, we're all Russian in that sense. So I'm simply saying there are examples where there are countries that are moving forward, not that we do exactly what they do. We do it our way historically, but we could do that. But it's a policy fight. Nobody's even talking about it.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of, momentum and inertia in our system. Both, inertia is kind of a two-way street. It's a body of rest, will stay at rest, but a body in motion, will remain in motion. And we have all these dynamic forces that are swirling around. We have a tremendous amount of deliberate fuckery behind them, including, whatever CIA, deep state blob, propaganda, manipulations are going on in the background, which include things like, using social media with, the FBI, with, remember.
That's social engineering. Yeah.
Well, there's that. I mean, that's a very sophisticated realm of that, but most of it is not that sophisticated. When the FBI managed to slip Jim Baker into his role at Facebook, was it Facebook or was it Google? No, I guess it was Facebook, huh?
At Facebook.
Yeah. Jim Baker had been the counsel to the director of the FBI, and sometime around 2021 or so, they slipped him into Facebook, to basically coordinate this censorship program. It was very overt, but they managed to get away with it. And even after Matt Taibbi and company ran the Twitter Files campaign and unearthed all of these communications that showed what was going on, nobody gave a fuck about it. So no one's ever really been prosecuted for any of that, so those manipulations are going on behind the scenes, and it's very hard to tell where the deliberate fuckery is at. I've been very disappointed in John Ratcliffe at the CIA right now, because we don't see any sign that he's really reforming the agency. And I'm kind of amazed at that. I don't know how that works.
Twitter, actually, not Facebook on Baker.
I'm sorry, Twitter.
I mean, people are upset at they're upset at Pam Bondi for not going anywhere with the Epstein investigation.
And we don't know really what that was about. I mean, I do kind of believe Dan Bongino when he says, we just don't have anything here in the filing cabinets. And look, it may be as simple as the fact that the Biden administration destroyed it all. It may be just that simple. Maybe they had a tremendous,
or they may want to protect
mother
people.
load of-
They may want to protect people whose names are in the files, but it's not necessarily incriminating.
I think,
Well, yeah,
and
that's
I think,
true.
And by the way, isn't that what we usually do? Like,
Sure.
yeah, we don't
Sure.
usually throw people's names out there if there's no evidence that they've done anything wrong.
But you'd think that they'd be able to sort through it all by this time and figure out, who really are the bad guys and who are the guys who are really innocent. And the whole thing's very, very mysterious.
It is, sure.
The one thing that keeps me from becoming deeply paranoid about it is I don't think Bongino would still be in that job if there was really a whole lot still there. That's my suspicion.
Yeah, he's
I mean, I think
he's
there's
either for
probably
real or he's a
financial
very
people.
good actor. I mean, I used to watch his podcast, and he certainly comes across as sincere.
I think he's sincere, and I you got to wonder what's going on with that guy right now. I mean, he's gone deep into he's gone deep into sort of hiding. Hasn't made any public statements for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the next thing that's coming around supposedly is the pipe bomb business.
Yeah.
And Bongino was deep into the pipe bomb investigation even when he was doing his podcast, before he was working in the government. Now, last night, a reporter for the Blaze, and I forget his name, came out and said that they had identified the pipe bomber, that and the indication seemed to be that it was a woman, and it was somebody who worked at the FBI. And he was supposed to drop a story about it today, and it didn't happen. And I don't know what's going on with him. Let me just look at this Twitter file, because his Twitter. Let's see here. What the heck's his name?
Go ahead and look for it.
Steve Baker.
Oh,
His
sorry.
name is Steve Baker, and he's a Blaze reporter. He said that he was going to be dropping this story about who the pipe bomber was. He's going to name names, and he said it was going to shake the FBI and the DOJ to its core, and maybe beyond that even, and that it was going to be a hugely disruptive story. And I read that at 1:30 in the morning.
All right. Well, I remember Darren Beatty was all over that too. Now, is he working in the Trump administration?
Yeah,
now?
he is. He's working for the State Department, I believe, as some kind of a communications director.
I haven't heard anything from him lately either. He's a very interesting, articulate person.
Yeah.
Very person.
So there are a lot of good people in there, and people who I am inclined to trust their sincerity and their patriotism. But, it must be extremely difficult. I think part of what we're seeing is that this resistance, so-called, is so deep and so malevolent that they're really having a tough battle with it.
Yeah, well, it always is eye-opening once they get there. It's not necessarily what they expected it to be.
Yeah.
So if you have a little bit more time, Jim, we wanted to get into your, not only the current events, but sort of your long-term worldview on, how you view cities and suburbia and so forth. And also just want to remind folks that your new book is out, Look, I'm Gone. I read the excerpt today. Seems like I don't know, on a mischaracterize it, you can correct me, but it seems like sort of a coming of age story. Maybe a little jealous to be reading this 12-year-old having all this excitement. I'm not sure I had that excitement even when I was 21, let alone when I was 12.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's about a 12-year-old boy who comes home for Thanksgiving weekend early because the Kennedy assassination took place on a Friday.
Right.
And so they closed down. He's coming from a kind of a punishment prep school where he's been sent for misbehaving. And he lands in New York City and proceeds to have a number of, he's at large in the city in the week after the Kennedy assassination. He has a number of adventures. And at the same time, he's reading The Catcher in the Rye. And he begins to developed this desire to go meet J.D. Salinger and talk to him. And so I don't want to give too many spoilers, except to say that this is J.D. Salinger's debut in American literature as a fictional character.
Okay. Well, you can read the same excerpt that we read, folks. Go to Jim's Substack, which is kunstler.com.
Yeah.
And you can buy the book wherever books are sold, also at our website, U.S. Tour of Duty.
Thank you for that. It's a pretty funny book. It's a comedy that takes place during a very tragic moment in our national life, as Ryan has said a few moments ago. Very traumatic week in American life, and yet this kid is having a set of basically comic adventures with serious overtones, shall we say.
I was supposed to be laughing. I was crying that I never had those experiences. I was just jealous.
Well, and then I was trying to figure out, how did he blow it that he gave a $5 tip? Right, I think that was wasn't it $5 that he gave her at the end, or 5 quarters or something?
No,
like
he gives
that?
her 5 quarters.
5 quarters, but still, it was a lot of money.
He comes into this joint where she's basically it's a dance hall off Broadway, off of Times Square, and. He's never been in a place like this before, and she teaches him how to do the foxtrot. Right. And before he came in, she was sitting on a chair waiting for a customer to come in and reading The Catcher in the Rye. Yeah. And she's totally bored with the book, and she gives it to him. She says, you're more interesting than he is. All he does is whine about stuff. And so then she informs him that a gentleman should tip, a lady for services. And she's taught him how to dance, and he gives her $1.25 because that's exactly the price on the back of the paperback book.
Exactly. Somebody asked if this was an autobiographical book.
In a way, it is. In a way, it's not. I mean, most of it's made up.
Somebody else wanted to know if there's going to be a movie.
Well, I don't know. Hollywood has fallen apart like everything else. Hollywood is in such a dismal state. It is just amazing. I don't. You ever venture into the wilderness of Netflix?
I used
to. Not lately. I used to. Yeah. Also,
isn't it the most frustrating thing?
That's why I don't have it anymore.
But you just wonder, how do these movies get a green light? Who wants to make these movies?
Who wants to watch them? Yeah.
Well, Lee Child is somebody that my wife used to work with in New York, and I used to work just outside of Times Square.
Me too.
And all of his books are slated to become movies. And I remember years ago, he writes the Reacher series, or wrote the Reacher series, right?
Sure.
And you think about it, now everything has to be CGI. There's none of this live discussion. It's just CGI. And it's just garbage, and then they redo it, repackage it in a new thing. It's practically the same script, but they just change the costumes and the CGI.
And they shoot some, second unit stuff in a different city. I've had a lot of my books optioned for movies, and they never get made. And in the meantime, Hollywood has completely collapsed. I think I'm on some sort of shit list there anyway, because I'm I'm not a liberal, and I don't pay too much attention to it anymore.
We have some questions for you, Jim, from the audience. What is your favorite movie or movies, given the topic of your books? Any that triggered or influenced your thinking?
Well, there are the movies of my adult life, which are pretty dear to me. Mostly the movies of the Coen brothers, who I think are just the most brilliant artists in contemporary America. Their best movie, in my opinion, being Miller's Crossing. And with many other runner-ups, and maybe the first runner-up being "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" I saw that movie for the first time in Barcelona in Spanish, and I could kind of tell what was going on. You could sort of tell, but when I went and saw it in America, like 3 weeks later when it opened in America, when I came home, and then I heard the script played out. And I thought, I cannot believe how brilliant this movie is. So, the Coen brothers, I think generally the movies of Paul Thomas Anderson are pretty, I admire them pretty much, although I haven't seen his latest one with Leo DiCaprio. I run a little hot and cold on Tarantino. although I think Pulp Fiction was
Yeah.
fantastic, and I really quite liked Once Upon a Time in the West. I thought that was pretty brilliant. The old movies, I don't know. I admire everybody from, Preston Sturges to John Huston.
Well,
When I
Mel
was a
Brooks
kid,
is supposed to come out with another movie.
I hated his movies.
I love these
I thought they were
movies.
totally fucking stupid and unfunny.
Oh my god!
I don't know why, you can't account.
Yeah,
for
they don't.
kids.
Yeah. Like, there's no accounting for sense of humor. He doesn't really make me laugh either. You know who else never made me laugh is Robin Williams.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, he always seemed like he was in a state of hysteria.
Yeah, he's quick. He's very quick. It's like, okay, I get it. You're smart. You're quick. I'm not laughing though. Here's another question for you. Can you see on the screen there?
Are you related to William Kunstler?
William Kunstler, the lawyer, the famous lawyer? No, I'm not. I'm not related to him, but I had a lot of fun with it when I was in college from 1966 to 71. And people asked me all the time. So I used to tell them I was related to Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver. And
I don't
they
even
go,
think
really? Really? Yeah. I said, yeah, my cousin Huey.
I don't even think Kunstler spelled his name the same way, though, did he?
Yeah, he did. Sure.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So before you go, let's talk a little bit about what cities should be, what suburbia should be. Are you familiar with the California Forever project?
I'm not.
Let me show you a video. It may be hard for you to comment on it if you're not that familiar with it, but let me show it anyway. And one of the things that we got interested in was when Trump was campaigning, he was talking about building cities from scratch. I don't know what the hell happened to that idea, but take a look at this.
Well, California Forever owns more than 100 square miles of land here in Solano County. That's twice the size of San Francisco. On it, their plans to build a new city now also include a massive manufacturing hub. On quiet Solano County farmland, the vision backed by Silicon Valley investors to build a new city of 400,000 people evolves.
But really, we're going back to what the Bay Area and Northern California used to do back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, when it was the center for manufacturing and particularly high-tech manufacturing in America.
The Solano Foundry is pitched as the largest manufacturing park in the country. California Forever's CEO says hand in hand with his proposed new city and a planned shipyard.
To provide a place where all of these companies that are doing incredible work in Silicon Valley can manufacture things in California instead of sending all of those jobs to Texas or Florida.
Jim DeClo, a Solano County professor, has opposed the project since the start and is behind Solano County's voter-backed Orderly Growth Initiative.
The entire growth strategy of Solano County for 40 years has been designed exactly to prevent a California Forever.
It's the cost of roads, sewage, and water for a development of this size that some Solano County taxpayers fear will land on their backs.
The taxpayers will pay for that one way or another, either directly or in a reduction of services.
But Sramick says his new city will be entirely self-funded and sustainable.
So it's fair to say that's never going to be a taxpayer burden?
Absolutely.
What's your impression?
Well, I just looked at it on the map. Solano County is that region sort of north of Vallejo, north of the East Bay. And, I drove through it about 3 years ago on my way to up north to Shasta County. And look, it's adjacent to the largest metropolitan area in Northern California, which is the Bay Area. In fact, what you could interpret that as an addition to the existing precincts and quarters of Oakland and Berkeley. So I don't know. In a way, they're just calling for an addition to the metro area of the East Bay. Now, I'd make some. I'd have some reservations about it in this sense. And by the way, I think you asked me this question because I wrote 3 books about urban design and architecture, and I was associated, and I still am associated. I'm a member of the Congress for the New Urbanism. And what they were mainly interested in was reforming the suburban sprawl impulse of property development in America, which was, a phenomenon of the 20th and 21st century that to some degree represents a series of bad choices that we made for how we're going to arrange life on the terrain of North America. And the new urbanists wanted to return to traditional town planning, to mixed use towns, to a scale of building that was congenial with human neurology, that did not overwhelm us with megastructures and other colossal things. And generally, I think that they had a wonderful program, and they were some of the best intellectuals, the best reforming people with a reforming impulse in America in the last 30 years. Now, their work has been thrown off balance for the last few years for a couple of reasons. For one thing, like every other institution in America, the New Urbanist organization has been taken over by women who have turned it into a psychodrama about DEI. So they got to get over that. And I think they are going to get over that. Sorry to say it. But another thing is much more kind of sinister, which is that there's this idea that's promoted, that has been promoted by the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and its fellow travelers. They call it the 15-minute city, and it's easily confused with the traditional town, traditional neighborhood.
We were wondering this very thing right before the show.
Yeah, and I think it's the big issue. I'm going to be doing a podcast with Chuck Maron, who runs an outfit called Smart Towns. He's basically a consultant, and it tries to convince and persuade his clients to build better stuff than suburban sprawl. But what's happened is the public is now thoroughly confused about, what is the 15-minute city and what is the new urbanism. They've got them totally conflated. And the 15-minute city has some sinister overtones. A lot of people think that it's, basically about surveillance, about controlling the population, not letting them move outside.
Some kind of neo-feudalistic thing.
Pardon?
Neo-feudalistic kind of arrangement.
Yeah, it's, I don't really know who generated that idea, but it has been very damaging to the new urbanism movement. And there's yet another layer to this, which is very unhelpful, which is the fact that the favored living arrangement for MAGA is suburbia, and they are kind of determined to defend it at all costs. Mm-hmm. It's very unfortunate because it's not really a good way for people to live. It's terribly damaging to children and their development, and destroys communities and families.
I live in suburbia, and it's like you can't get anywhere without driving 10, 15 minutes, and you don't see your neighbors hardly ever.
Where are you?
I'm in Central Texas. I'm in Austin.
Okay, yeah.
Austin area.
I've been around Texas a lot because I was on the lecture circuit for 20 years, and I've been in and out of that place 10 times.
Well, my town has exploded by 300% in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I used to go back there like every year, and there'd be some new clusterfuck of more 6-laners and muffler shops and all the furnishings of the whole kit. It's very, very, very disturbing to see that.
You can't walk to a grocery store.
Yeah. And
so do you want to, I don't want to dox you, so to speak, Jim, but do you want to say the name of your town now or no?
Well, I don't really want to say, but
okay.
I'm in a really small village of about 2,500 people. And it's about 4 miles from the Hudson River. We're on a tributary of the Hudson River called the Battenkill River. It's a renowned trout stream, runs out of Vermont into the Hudson River. And it's a former factory village. It used to have like 5 textile and paper factories, small scale, none of them big. There's one factory left 2 miles outside of town, and that's it. It's economically very beat. The main street is nothing but consignment shops. Now the saving grace of the thing is that it's in a very beautiful part of the state and a beautiful corner of the country, and the terrain is beautiful, and it's important to me. And I'm doing a little homesteading thing there on the edge of town. Literally,
how do you call it a village? But how does one distinguish a village?
It's a traditional main. It's a traditional Main Street village. It's a matter of scale or increment of, size, and
Population density.
the population is 2,500 people, and it is officially a village within the nomenclature of New York State's.
So would it be fair to say it's like a small city more than it is a suburb?
Oh, it's definitely not a suburb,
Yeah.
but it's not a city. It's a town. It's a
Mhm.
town,
Right.
and it's a town with a main street and a bunch of residential neighborhoods, not too many, and it had a bunch of factories in it, and it has a small complement of commercial sprawl on the west side of town.
No Walmart, no,
No,
Costco.
We had a Kmart and it closed.
So
Now
I mean,
by the way, that space has been empty for 2 years now.
because remember how it used to be before those box stores existed. You did have the whole downtown stores, and now here in my town, they're building the largest Costco, the largest Target, and I think it's going to be the largest Walmart in the United States.
Well, I would remind you that in evolution, in evolutionary biology, a lot of times an organism will reach its largest and most florid stage at the end of its existence. And I think we're seeing that now. I think that we're going to be very shortly leaving giantism behind, corporate giantism. And I think we're going to be constrained to relocalize and reorganize.
People want local food. Bobby Kennedy is all about having the better quality food. You can't do that with these big corporate operations.
Well, look, I think this is just a kind of historical imperative. Things are going to be going in the other direction. We're in a period, in many ways, a period of contraction. And it's one of the things that's causing so much of the trouble that we're in, is that a lot of things are going to be contracting. Our cities are going to contract. Our cities attained a scale that is inconsistent with the capital and resource realities of the future. And they're going to contract, and the process is going to be messy, and there are going to be fights over who gets to occupy the parts of the cities that retain their value, like maybe the waterfronts and the core, the old historic cores. And then there are going to be a lot of parts of the cities that lose their value. There are many cities in America that are already in an advanced state of that. If you go to Detroit or Cleveland or Dayton, Ohio, or Indianapolis.
Flint.
Well, Flint, yeah.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Wilmington, North Carolina, by any chance?
Well, I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I live.
Well,
That's not a
I
bad
guess it must
place.
be a great wine town.
Well, it's okay. It's like many others. It's neither. It's not particularly impressive, nor is it lacking. But what do you do for food? Are you a guy who cooks a lot? Because
I do cook a lot.
Yeah.
I have a large garden, and it's now November 6th. I've still got a lot of kale coming, and I've got arugula still coming. I even have some flowers coming, I grow about 100 pounds of potatoes this year. They're in the garage in a cool place, and I don't know. I wanted to do that. I generally have chickens, although I was running a flock of about 5 birds, and they all got killed at the end of the summer by a fox.
Fresh eggs are the best.
Yeah, it's really great. Having chickens is great, but I didn't get a new flock in the fall because I don't want to just get a bunch of young birds and force them to live through the winter. So I'm waiting until the spring. I'll get a new flock and I'll trap the fox and I'll deport him. I have friends who mostly, what they do is they trap these animals and they shoot them. I don't like to do that. And the state DOC frowns upon deportation. But, I'd rather do that. I'd rather take them on a 5-mile journey to a strange land.
And drop them off. Yeah.
And drop them off. Yeah.
All right. So how do people follow your work, Jim? We've been flashing some of it on the screen, but
thank you very much.
Yeah, but maybe there's more. I mean,
my blog comes out every Monday and Friday by 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's called Clusterfuck Nation. It's at kunstler.com, my last name.com. My books are on my website there. My whole website is on Substack. I had to move it there after nefarious parties took it down in last October, a year ago October, during the end of the presidential campaign. I was writing things that were unfavorable to the administration, and I think that they trashed my website. So I moved to Substack.
Well, where was it hosted? Let's badmouth them. Where was it hosted?
Well, it was the website was on the platform of WordPress, but it actually lived on a server in a New Jersey server farm. And it was on its own server for security purposes because it was constantly getting trashed or at least had a lot of denial of service attacks.
So it wasn't the host. It was
somebody who was attacking it.
Yeah. But in this case, we found out that actual human beings actually came in and took the server away.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. It was really lovely. So,
well, Substack's great, even though they don't allow you to indent. I saw that you were upset about that.
Well, I wasn't upset about it. I don't understand what the point is.
Yeah. Well, that's the downside of Substack. You're a slave to their format.
Yeah.
But unlike a website where you can customize it. But the plus side is it works really well. It's very robust and reliable, and it's a good way to generate donations. I don't know how they do it, but you do the same thing somewhere else, maybe just because of the way it's laid out or something. You can't make any money in other places like you can on Substack.
Yeah, it is better for that. And my blog is free. There's no paywall, but people can contribute to the cause voluntarily. And I appreciate it because I'm trying to make a living doing this at my advanced age. Because I've had to make the transition between relying on book advances, which you really can't get a decent advance anymore. They're giving all the money to Michelle Obama. But for us mid-list authors, forget about it. And I've had to work my publishing life around that too. I'm now using boutique publishers instead of the old legacy trade houses because it's just they don't work anymore. They just they won't publish old white guys and the Simon and Schuster is now run by 23-year-old girls, and the whole thing is ridiculous. So I've had that personal experience of having to, reorganize my writing life so I can make a living and navigate through all the problems that have been generated from the collapse of these industries.
What do you make of Michelle Obama and people like her getting these multi-million-dollar deals? I don't think they're selling enough books to make that money back. It
Absolutely
seems like
not.
Some sort of a money laundering operation?
It is a money laundering operation, especially. I don't know about
How would it be money laundering? I mean, there's not much money.
I asked the question.
It's what they're doing is they're directing revenue flows into the bank accounts of favored people, and to some extent it's to reward them for stuff like I'm sure Jim Comey got his book advance because he was being rewarded for being a Hillary Clinton supporter one way or another. And possibly to enable him to assemble a defense fund, in the event that he was going to need it, which he now does. And, a lot of these political characters get book advances for that reason.
Oh, I know Chelsea Clinton, who has not really been in public. She does these speaking tours and she gets $40,000.
Yeah, it's absurd.
I mean, just obscene amounts of money.
I know you just.
She's already a gazillionaire anyway. She married a hedge fund guy.
Yeah.
I guess you just answered the question, but I missed it. Can you say again how it works, the money laundering?
Well, basically, a publishing company will make a deal with a favored politician. They'll give them a whole bunch of money. They may in fact be on the receiving end of NGO money from Soros or Gates or some other outfit, and they just parlay it over in one way or another in the form of a book advance. And when the books don't sell, they just shred them.
Or they make deals where people buy books in bulk, like on the.
That's another thing. Yeah, it's like they'll get the Democratic Party to buy 10,000 copies of.
Then they'll give it out at a speaking event.
No, they'll give it out. Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
And,
it's sort of like a version of round tripping in the financial world. You familiar with that, Jim?
I've heard the term. I don't remember what it is.
So there are people that say this is what's going on with NVIDIA. So, for example, some company A in AI will order a huge number of NVIDIA's AI special chips, and they're highly inflated. And so then they'll have an order. They will, put it on their books that they've got this much money coming in. And then basically you have a group of these companies, and they just keep rotating the funds through a series of these fake orders. And then they keep building up their value so that they show tremendous stock value. But it's just a big scam.
Yeah. So
there's a post about AI that Jim
there
wrote.
You go. To my
you actually opened my eyes, believe it or not, because I'm a guy who's like, oh, pornography, big deal. Don't be uptight. Don't be such a prude. But you made a good point that if people are masturbating instead of procreating, it kind of puts a stop to the human race. And that's sort of a big deal. Yeah.
Certainly Western Civ.
Yeah.
Well, that is a big problem actually in the world right now.
It
is.
Demographics are collapsing.
Yeah, even in China.
Everywhere. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, you have so much. Every Substack post you write is just packed with interesting things. So I hope we have you back periodically. I know you got to get
a hold of.
Yes, it wasn't too much trouble, but I know you have to get up at 4 a.m. tomorrow. That's because you have that self-imposed deadline to get it out.
Every Monday and Friday, I get up at 4 a.m. I write a blog. But I got to say, I really, really like it. I love the tranquility of that hour of the day, and I'm able to compose pretty easily. I don't suffer from writer's block, and I really enjoy composing.
That's actually one thing I wanted to ask you. Well, you just answered the question. Yeah.
I like exercising my slightly malicious sense of humor.
Yeah. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning also, but that's to go bike riding.
Oh, gee. Oh, gosh.
I get up at 4 to pee, and then I go back to bed.
Yeah, we go ride 30 miles in the pitch black, and then I come back and go back to sleep for an hour.
Can you do it in the suburban milieu? Is it dangerous and scary?
It's less dangerous because there's nobody driving at 4:30.
Are you on county roads or what?
Yeah, county roads.
But you got injured doing it. What are you talking about?
Well, that was a case where the dog was outside of his fence, but I now carry a handgun so that if there's a dog.
Well, that doesn't change the answer.
But it's not cars.
It's dangerous. Yes,
yeah, but it's not cars. And a lot of cyclists get hit by cars because somebody's looking at their cell phone, and they just drive over the cyclist, and then they just keep driving.
I used to bike every day, and I had some misadventures like that. I had a couple of crashes. One summer, 2 crashes on the same country road. A dragonfly flew up against my throat, and I took my hands off the handlebars. And I did a face plant. And I was on the same road like 2 months later, and I was reaching down to mess around with a cable, and went over the handlebars. These days, I have a wonderful country road across the river from town, from the little village that I'm in. And I do a hill climb up this country road. It's a dirt road. There's only 3 houses along the whole way. And it terminates at a beautiful little lake that doesn't have any houses on it. And I'm just so lucky that I can do that. I get to do that beautiful walk every day. Lucky me.
Sounds like you have mastered the art of living.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I live a purposeful life, a well-organized life with happy routines that are, spiritually fortifying for me. And it worked out. I was lucky, because growing up was harder for me than life is now.
Oh, good. Well, we all deserve things to kind of even out. I think that's how life works for a lot of us. Many times the people who had a rough time at the beginning wind up doing a lot better later in life. So I'm glad to hear that. Now, very important question before. What's that?
It's been a pleasure yakking with you guys.
Oh yeah, same here. Very important question though before we say goodnight. If you weren't getting up at 4 a.m., do you sometimes enjoy wine or other adult beverages or no?
Well, these days, very, very little, not that much, because I find that it wakes me up in the middle of the night.
Oh, if you don't react well, that's a good reason not to.
I have a problem with it. I don't know whether it's my Jewy blood or what, but
well, drink a lot of water before and after the next time you want.
I used to be a very enthusiastic drinker in my younger days, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. Well, my limit is a lot less than it used to be too, and I have to drink a lot of water in order to make it all work.
Yeah, and I find red wine to be especially kind of hard on my neurology.
Right. Well, it doesn't seem like you need it to enjoy life. So.
Well, were you going to send me some?
Sure. Not if you're not going to drink it, though. I don't want to. I don't want to ruin your sleep, Jim.
No, I probably won't. I mean, sooner or later, someone will come over here and drink it. But no, you don't need to pay me.
All right.
And I'm very glad. I really appreciate that you know about my book and are willing to show people the cover. It's
right. Well, I thought you were going to pay us for promoting it, actually.
Well, how much you want?
How about just a bottle of
$1.25? $1.25.
Yeah. How about a cover price? How about a bottle of Williams Electric Shave?
Fair enough.
My go-to beverage.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, and I know you're a busy guy, but if you want to come back periodically, we'd love to have you. Just
give me a jingle. Anytime anytime there's something really weird going on in the country.
All right, and we'll see if you and Morgan can have some great makeup.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing though. Do you have another minute?
For you? No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I mean yes. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I just said, I'm Jewish. I don't practice or anything. I just grew up in the east side of Manhattan, and I come from that culture. And it's I think if anybody was going to twang on the Jews, they twang on these lawfare Jews. I don't understand why they're not getting twanged. Everybody's twanging on Netanyahu. I wish they'd twang on Norm Eisen and Ben Whitting.
I hate that guy.
And Michael Bromwich and the rest of that gang.
Lawrence Tribe too. Is he
Trump?
Jewish?
Yeah,
Lawrence Tribe.
Trump had attacked Netanyahu as a fucking idiot. Trump had. So yeah. I don't think Trump likes Netanyahu just like he doesn't like Zelensky.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu's probably a disagreeable fellow. For real,
he's got a lot of trouble back home.
But he does have a lot. But his look, he is the leader of a country, and he's the leader of a country that is under duress and has been for decades. And he's doing what Bibi's doing what Bibi got to do.
Bibi's practically an American, though. He went to Central High in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And do you go to college? You go to Penn or something?
I don't.
Columbia.
That's where they would. That's where all the Jews goes to. Penn, University of Pennsylvania. I know.
No, they go to
I
all
lived
of
there
them.
in 16 years.
You think they don't go to Harvard and
they
Brown
go?
And Yale?
No, that is the Jewish Harvard. That's what they told me when I was there too. So.
The jihadi reference, by the way, made me, let's just say, raise my eyebrows. Obviously, Morgan objected more strenuously, and so did, I don't know if you saw the comments, Jim. So did
I can't see him.
A few people in the audience reacted very negatively, and to you guys, I just want to say, that's one issue. Jim's a great guest, and we can disagree and even disagree intensely. But I think all things considered, Jim is a great guest, and we're going to continue to have people on.
And I would just say to that, also, if you want to solve a problem, you are going to have to talk to people you disagree with.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to figure out a way to solve it.
Yeah.
Like Netanyahu, he can't. I was going to say Zelensky. he's going to have to talk. He's going to have to pay the piper pretty soon, and he's not.
Yeah, I wouldn't
want
one
bit of it.
I wouldn't want to be him.
All right, time to eat dinner.
Okay, boys.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Get to the chuck wagon.
Join us next week, same time, same place. We love you all. Good night, everybody.
Congresswoman, how are your trades now that you can't get insider information? Is it true you've been drinking more vodka lately? Why do your boobs look like sandbags? Is your husband still having an affair with the hammer guy? And why are you dressed like a leprechaun? Have you found your pot of gold yet?
Shut up. I'm 200 fucking years old. You try walking around with a pair of sandbags, and yes, my husband is fucking the hammer guy. That's why I'm drunk.
American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.